My experience definitely puts a lot of things in perspective for myself. I can't ignore a lot of things that a lot of people can't ignore, and I can definitely ignore, things that I'm designed to ignore. But where it puts me definitely has me checking in with certain scenarios. A lot of those scenarios come from the current conversation, and the conversation that's been going on in this country for a very long time. Never, I guess, never not in the existence of its being, because like people just don't accept horrible things. One of my favorite things from Native culture was a saying, why take with hate something that's given to you freely with love. And that's that's something that's definitely that's a reflection that's part of American history. And we exclude huge parts of American history, and we include the more palatable parts of American history. We've been taught to act a certain way, to be a certain way, to expect people to slide into our lives in a certain way. I'm not a really huge fan of the way things are supposed to be, especially since they've been so toxic for so long. And where is our grounding? Where do we put aside the psychological manipulation and the toxic conditioning, and where is a foundation of living our lives, being what we want to be, being what we could be? I feel like we have this expectation, and no matter how much we try, we're navigating. Even the most rebellious of us is still navigating around it. It's like a black hole, or some kind of singularity, some kind of giant mass with a gravitational pull, and even as we rebel against it, we're still just spinning around it. And yeah, it's an overwhelming thing to think about. What it's like to be, I guess, ultimately to be free. What does free look like in a country that uses the word freedom and justice and all these other words that it doesn't know how to represent within itself? Words that it's put them on a pedestal of existence, and on a pedestal of its existence, meanwhile not representing them in any way, shape, or form. So, because the many cultures of this country don't have justice, don't have freedom, don't have any of the things that it pretends, and arguably like 99% of the people in this country don't experience these things. But when you're told a lie enough times, you eventually begin to believe it. So people are told that they're free, and after a while they start to believe it, and they start to regurgitate it. I mean, I regurgitated that shit for a long time. I was raised saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I was raised to be patriotic. And yeah, it's just, and fighting against that is it's an interesting happening in people's lives, but also it is, what is it? It's counterproductive to fitting in. It's counterproductive to community. When the community wants to subscribe to the lie, when you start to look at it and ask questions that people don't like, they don't like you. They push away from you. You're being negative. You're asking the wrong questions. You're not being happy. It's really interesting. And the silver lining of my existence is the truth. Living in the South and living in poor, like so many of us, the obvious truth was, and design in this country was, fuck you. You don't mean anything. You're not even a number worth mentioning. Your residue, you're not even useful residue on the bottom, so like navigating that reality gives you a certain sense of certain tools and coping mechanisms to deal, but also the truth you eventually fall upon to feed yourself isn't that positive. In order to deal with the real truth, I tried to engage the positivity of this town, and it was a band-aid that fell off really fast. It didn't work. It was obviously wasn't designed for me. It was designed for the people regurgitating it. The lack of diversity in this town, the people who look very much like one another, who've kind of like fit that same mold, who are all saying the same thing. It was designed for them. It wasn't designed for somebody like me or people like me, and we can subscribe to it. But what it, and I mean, there's obviously a reason and a silver lining to subscribing to it. You become part of the crew. You become part of the community, and everybody wants to be part of the community, but I've been outside of the community for so long, I don't get the chemical hit. I don't get the fix, and I don't need it. I've grown outside of it my entire life. I've never been in it, so and then I moved to Asheville and never really was kind of accepted in the community. I was allowed to participate in the community, but I definitely wasn't really incorporated in the community. And I would see a lot of there was this one photographer. I shot for a group for a very long time, and then all of a sudden I saw this photographer move in and get invited to all the parties, be part of the scene and part of the group, and they eventually moved away because they weren't making any money, and that's just what happens. But meanwhile, I had been doing this stuff for a long time, so there was a need for that body, there was a need for that entity, but also there's a need for that entity to very much resemble the community, which doesn't coincide with the narrative of incorporation, the narrative of diversity. If you need everything to think and act like you and ultimately look like you, just like America, saying that it stands for this, it stands for that, and not ever having the action of those words in its community, like justice and freedom and all blah blah blah, you're ultimately just a mirror of America. You're saying all the words with none of the actions, and that's fine. Why would you be any different? And am I any different? Probably not. But to acknowledge it, and it's definitely a form of, to me, it's a form of violence. It's a violence towards a group of people that you pretend to stand for, that you pretend to want good for, and when you just say it with words and there's no action, to me it's violence, because those people need the actions attached to those words, not just the words, not just the signs. And ultimately, I think the words and the signs are designed more for the people regurgitating them, not for the people that need the standing for it. It's a self-validating measure. It's to make the problem feel better about the problem. And yeah, it's America. We're all the problem. I'm not. Anytime I say, you know, like something's a problem, I don't ever exclude myself from that scenario, because I'm American. I was born in the machine, and I was born in machine parts. So, you know, so that puts me in the problem. If I didn't accept myself as part of the problem, I wouldn't be doing the work that I want to be doing, you know. And I'm doing the work for me. I'm doing the work for my own peace of mind, for my own life, to understand and see my surroundings as much as I possibly can, and it leads to some excruciating truth, some excruciating realities, and you know, but that's what I'm here for. I'm not here for easy. I'm not here for nice. I'm not here to be your friend. I'm not here to be your enemy. I'm just here to be. And if we are doing the work of freeing ourselves, and looking for diversity and looking for a new way of life, how much control can we continue to have on one another, and how many conditioned expectations can we continue to have on one another? How can we keep forcing each other to live in these boxes? I moved to, there's a little bee. I moved to Asheville, and was immediately kind of treated like the enemy by a lot of people. And then I slowly realized that they only had eyes to see an enemy. They didn't have eyes to see much of anything else, based on their experience and their lack of growth, but also their lack of diversity, their lack of ability to, I mean, when you're surrounded by diversity, surrounded by different conversations, different, you know, vibrations, you grow based on that. If you don't grow based on that, you're stubborn, but whatever, that's besides the point. I've only been surrounded by people like me for the past, for the past, 26, 27 years. So for the past 27 years, I've been surrounded by people not like me, people who don't think like me. I've been surrounded by other conversations, rarely, if ever, my conversation. So I've been forced to evolve to other people's ways of life my entire existence, but definitely the past 27 years, because in California, that's where I'm from. My culture has developed there, or some kind of culture, some kind of something that is new, and then I was plucked away from that and put into, you know, the Carolinas, where it couldn't be farther away from my conversation. And I've been forced to evolve and assimilate, and that's taken a giant toll and price on who and what I am. But also it's put a lot of things in perspective that I wouldn't have experienced. Otherwise. I've got a little bumblebee on my camera right now, just chilling. But yeah, you know, like, so I'm kind of thankful for the experience. I'm gonna try to get this motherfucker off. Oh, there you go. Look at him. Yeah, I guess maybe there's some salt on my camera or whatever. There he is, right there. Where you at? There you are. Blah blah. But yeah. So yeah, living in the South, you know, fucking sucked. But also, you know, it created a kind of a stress and a nemesis in my life that has kept me growing and fighting for the past 27 years, which is, you know, it is what it is. It's caused, you know, a lot of psychological issues in me, but it also has forced, like, yeah, it's given me a certain kind of skin that I wouldn't have developed living in the culture of my people in the Riverside area, in the Southern California area. So yeah, like I said, that's where I pull positivity. You know, that to me, that's positivity. To me, that's seeing something and being thankful for it. Ultimately, being thankful for not being in the conversation that ultimately would have nurtured me in a lack of growth. And maybe I would be patriotic. Maybe I would believe more in this country, because to me, Riverside, California is a bubble. It's not the world. It's a very small place, and it's surrounded by everything not like it. Cholo culture in the Southern California area is a very unique phenomenon, and I haven't really experienced it or bumped into it in almost any place in America. So we're in this little bubble, which is strange, and I left that bubble in 1995. So yeah.